Hi, I'm Mayank, and I'm the founder of a project called MindSpec, where I'm taking the brainwaves of music artists while they listen to their own music, and then convert that brainwave data into visual art to sell as NFTs. See, music's a very powerful thing. It's one of the 5 ways that our brain interfaces with the real world, right? We use our sense of sound, touch, sight. That's the way our brain, this black box, interacts with the real world. And because of that, it has the ability to change our emotions, how we're feeling, and it can actually change the way that neurons in our brain are firing. It can speed up the firing of neurons, slow it down, even change which parts of our brain they're firing in. And this is something we can actually measure physically. See, when neurons fire in your brain, they produce this electric field on the surface on your scalp. And if you put 2 electrodes there, you can actually quantify the firing of neurons. And this is what that data would look like. This is brainwave data. It's basically just a graph of the electricity coming out off of your brain. And we can analyze that data to understand how you're feeling, what emotions you're going through, and sometimes even what type of images you're looking at. And so it's interesting to think about, what would the brainwave data of music artists look like while they're listening to their own music? Imagine if I put an EEG, which is this device that measures your brainwaves, on a music artist and measure their brainwaves. It would produce a really unique piece of data that only that music artist can produce. And also, when I've talked to these music artists while they listen to their own music, they were saying that these songs bring up nostalgia about how the music was created, what emotions they were feeling when they wrote the song, how they created it, who it's about. And these are all really unique emotions that can only come from this music artist because they're the one who created it. It's a very unique perspective. And so I wanted to take this neural fingerprint and then convert it into a visual piece of art. So the raw data looks like that graph I showed you, but I'm taking that and then turning it into art that looks like this. So this is an example of 3 art pieces I've created based on songs that I've listened to myself. And the best part about this art is that every single part of it is very, very intentional. So each one of these nodes in these art pieces represents one moment in time. And everything about that node will tell you about what that music artist was feeling at that particular moment in time. So this is a legend of how to analyze each one. So each one of the RGB values of these nodes corresponds to a certain emotion. So the more red a node is, the more focused the person was when they were listening to the song. The more green it is, the more drowsy they were. And the more blue it is, the more calm they were. And so those 3 RGB values come together to make a unique color. And also, how far away these nodes are from the center of those spheres. So if you go back, you can look. Each node is a certain distance from the center of the sphere. And that distance corresponds to how emotionally stimulated they were. So if you think about looking at a brick, that's not very emotionally stimulating, it's just a brick. But if you look at something like a firework, that's very emotionally stimulating. Also, the shape may look kind of random, but it's actually an encryption of the brainwave data itself. So I take the brainwave data in that particular moment in time and run it through the same encryption function that the Ethereum blockchain uses, which is Keccak 256. And it produces this noise pattern on the surface of the node. And lastly, the size of each node is dependent on the heart rate of the person. So the higher your heart rate is, the bigger the node will be. And so if we go back to these pieces, we can analyze each one and understand what someone was feeling during a certain moment in time. So the first song is Pompeii by Bastille, which is a very upbeat and pumped song. And as you can see, the whole art piece is very pink. So the emotion of mainly focus and some calmness completely took over the entire piece. And there's that little arc at the very beginning. That just means that I was very emotionally stimulated at the very beginning of the song. So when it slows down, that's the very beginning of the song, and then it rotates around, and that rotation is based on time. The next song is Everything I Wanted by Billie Eilish, which is a very calm song. So for me, it was very emotionally stimulating. So you can see that the sphere is just way bigger than the previous one, because all these arcs are way bigger. And then the main color here is green, which means I was very drowsy. But then there's also some variety, there's some reds when I was really focused, and white, which means I was just feeling a combination of all 3 of those emotions. And the last one is Let Her Go by Passenger, which is also a very calming song. So you see some moments of intense emotional stimulation, and there's just a lot more variety of emotions because there's way more colors in that one. But the main focus of this project is to measure the brainwaves of actual music artists. So here's an example of an art piece I made from an actual artist. So this is Riel, who I met a couple weeks ago in Toronto when she was performing at the Junos, which is like the Canadian version of the Grammys. And I measured her brainwaves while she listened to her most popular song called Redemption, that has like 32 million streams on Spotify, along with a bunch of songs from an unreleased album. And you can see, if we analyze this art piece too, you can see she started off she wasn't very emotionally stimulated, but it gradually increases. And there's just a lot of colors there, so her emotions were changing a lot throughout the entire piece. And the main purpose behind minting these as NFTs, like this is artwork, which is pretty cool, but the main purpose behind turning it into NFTs is to create more utility for the fans of this artist. So my whole plan was to create sort of like a VIP pass to an artist you really like. So if I'm a big fan of an artist, I'll buy their NFT, it'll give me exclusive access to any merchandise that they drop. It can be my concert ticket to any time they're performing near me. And also, this is more interesting for emerging to mid-tier artists because it's an investment in the artists themselves. Like imagine if I bought an NFT of Ed Sheeran when he was playing guitar in some random pub and no one knew about him. That NFT would be worth so much more today. And I have proof on the blockchain that I supported this artist way before everyone else. Another great thing we can do with it is to create POAPs from people's brainwave data. So if you don't know what a POAP is, it's basically this NFT that's like a badge that proves that you attended an event. So like I could give you guys a POAP right now and you could see that, you could show to people, okay, I went to this event and no one else can claim it. So it'd be really cool to have POAPs of people's brainwave data. Because a brainwave data of a person participating in an event is something that can only be produced in that moment. That brainwave data is never going to happen again. And I did this in LA. I went to an event in NFC LA. They had performers performing live. They had headsets on, measuring their heart rate, how emotionally stimulated they were, and their brainwave data. And then I turned it into these pieces of art that people in the audience could buy. And right now I'm doing the same thing. I have this headset on, I have this little device on my wrist, and I'm collecting all the data that I need to make an NFT from my brainwave data while I'm presenting here on stage. I did the same thing back in Denver at a conference where I spoke, and was able to sell that to someone in the audience because it's like a really cool representation of that moment in time. And if you guys want, you can buy it after. You can follow me on Twitter, and I'll be posting the link to the NFT from this brainwave data. Thanks. Do we have time for questions? Yes. Okay. 3 minutes? All right. Anyone got any questions? Yeah. You would like, I think it's like, yeah. Oh, she has a microphone, okay.
Hi. Pretty interesting stuff. So, do you have to calibrate this per person? Like, if you're measuring the brain waves of a different person from yourself, do you have to calibrate that because, I don't know, like the values?
Yeah, you're right. So what I do before each measurement is take a baseline. So it'll measure like, what's my baseline heart rate or focus? Like my heart rate would have been much higher right before I walked on stage because obviously I'm a bit nervous versus like if I'm just sitting down somewhere. So it takes that baseline, how focused I was, et cetera. And then it'll take a metric of how far it deviates from that baseline. And because even people's data varies day to day, so you take a baseline right before the actual recording.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for your presentation. I wonder what's kind of the overlap of the individual like measurements if you kind of like tested it on yourself or someone else, like does the representation of what you get like after taking all of these measurements like roughly correspond? Like, if you kind of like match a person, a setup and a particular song, for instance, does the output look like somewhat the same, or are there like major differences? Just like wondering about the patterns that you can get out of this.
Yeah, so you're saying like if I take the same song with multiple people, does it look the same?
Or even with the same person. I mean, like if you could,
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. So like the artist I showed you before, Riel, actually a lot of her pieces, the emotional stimulation part looks very similar. It's kind of like that conch pattern. And I would say, yeah, it does vary from person to person. There are some people, I make the art for them and I see colors I've never seen before. Like especially for hers, she had like yellows in hers. I've almost never seen yellow in anyone's artwork before. So it does vary from person to person. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. You can just say it out loud. I can hear you.
It's not loud in here, but I can. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just wondering if you could tell us about the equipment you're using. Like, do you know any specifics about like the number of electrodes you're using? I see you use the heart rate monitor on your wrist, but like for the head electrodes that you are using to measure EEG, like what is the equipment like?
Yeah, so this is the headset. It's got, I believe, 10 electrodes. So there's like horns here. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on various cortexes of the brain. So you get data from a lot of different areas. Yeah.
Do you know the manufacturer of the equipment?
Yeah, it's called Neurosity. So this device is called the Crown. It's made by a company called Neurosity.
Okay, thank you. That's cool.
Yeah, and this measures heart rate and GSR, if you know what GSR is.
I know what GSR is.
Okay, yeah, so it measures GSR.
Yeah, can I also just inquire, do you use, since like the EEG data it's different if the person is, for example, sitting still or moving or blinking, or for example, if they have their eyes closed, the alpha waves would like, they would be basically the only thing you actually see in the artwork. So are you using like any algorithms to like remove those artifacts, or how do you get the clean EEG?
Yeah, so always the same setting, the person sitting, not moving around. This is a bit of a unique situation, but I can't really do anything about it. I try not to move my head too much. But yeah, they start with their eyes closed. Again, so because I take a baseline, that increase in alpha is in the baseline, and they keep their eyes closed the entire time.
So the eyes are closed the entire time?
Entire time. And people just intuitively seem to close their eyes because that helps them experience the music more. Yeah, I don't even have to tell the artists every time. They just intuitively close their eyes, which works out really well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. So regarding when you're selling the NFTs that you make, for example, the NFTs of the artists that you recorded in New York, when you're selling them, these NFTs are their NFTs or your NFTs?
Yeah, so we do a split. We do like a 50-50 split. That's the model I'm going with right now. So the initial sale, we split it. Any recurring revenue from secondary sales, also we split.
You put that in the contract or in the smart contract? Or?
Yeah. So you can put a revenue split directly in there. For some of the older ones, it doesn't have it because I just put them on OpenSea. But I haven't actually minted any of the ones for actual artists because we're still working out contracts and logistics. But for those ones, it's going to be in the contract. For this one, it's all me. This one's not going to be a revenue split with anyone, so don't need to worry about that. But yeah, it's going to be in the smart contract to do a revenue split, so it just automatically goes to their wallet.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we are run of our time. I'm sure our speaker will be free after the talk, so you can ask him anything you want. So thank you for your coming and see you around.
And you guys can just message me on Twitter if you want to talk, or my Telegram's the exact same handle, whichever works.